Allora facciamo una cosa, adesso appena arrivato si apre quella porta, apriamo la porta. Io vi aspetto sotto il fondo lì, aspetto in chiesa, capito? Ok.
Laudetur Jesus Christus. Praised be Jesus Christ. A very warm welcome to you on behalf of Vatican Media, Vatican Radio, and all my colleagues here at the Vatican's Dicastery for Communication. I'm Devin Watkins, and it is my privilege to provide the commentary for this live broadcast of Pope Francis's meeting with members of the Church in Cyprus. This is the first event on his apostolic journey to the Mediterranean island nation. On whatever platform, medium, or device you may be following this event, please know that we are so happy you could join us. We especially welcome our friends at Catholic TV, Catholic Faith Network, Shalom World Television Networks USA, EWTN TV, Shalom TV India, Salt and Light TV, Atma Darshan TV, and Luminous Radio, as well as all of you who are joining us on local radio stations around the world. This broadcast is also available live right now on our Vatican Media audio app and Vatican News portal, which you can access at vaticannews.va, and on our Facebook page. Pope Francis has just arrived in Cyprus. He's landed at Larnaca Airport in Nicosia, and he is now they're awaiting his arrival at the Maronite Cathedral of Our Lady of Grace in the capital city, Nicosia. The Pope is set to meet with priests, religious men and women, deacons, catechists, lay associations, and other church movements in Cyprus. Just the general Catholic community and its many representatives. If you're joining us on television, we can see the community gathered there in the Maronite Cathedral, awaiting the Pope's arrival. The Pope should receive a couple of words of welcome from the Cardinal Bechara Boutros Rai, who is the Maronite Patriarch. And then along with some hymns and traditional songs, a couple of religious sisters will welcome the Pope and also perhaps give an idea of the situation and the life of the Catholic community in Cyprus. And the Pope will greet those present. This is the first of his official events here in Cyprus. Later today he will meet with the civil authorities and the president of Cyprus. The papal motorcade is arriving there at the cathedral.
Li prendo io? Li prendi tu? No, tu, come vuoi.
Now, as we, ahead of the Pope's departure, the Vatican News and Vatican Media spoke to Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State. He gave some indications about the Pope's spirit in which he's traveling to Cyprus and later to Greece, which will be the second leg of this apostolic journey. The Cardinal Parolin said that the Pope is traveling to Cyprus with the spirit of encounter that characterizes all of his apostolic journeys. And it's motivated in general by his desire to meet the other, to encounter the local community of whatever nation he's visiting. The Pope has gotten down out of the car, and he's greeting the patriarchs. This visit, according to Cardinal Parolin, is also the Pope considers it a pilgrimage to the origins of the Church. So Cyprus was, it's mentioned in the Acts of the Apostles because the Apostles Paul and Barnabas traveled there. St. Paul traveled to Cyprus and converted the Roman governor of the island to Christianity. And the local community considers the Apostle Barnabas, who stayed on as it's one of its founding members. And so the Pope's going to return to these origins, to rediscover the joy of the gospel, as Cardinal Parolin puts it. So the Catholic community on Cyprus is generally, it's a very ancient church. Most of the Christians on the island are the Orthodox tradition. Now we hear the applause as the Pope enters the cathedral. Pope Francis receives an asperger, and he blesses himself with holy water and blesses the community gathered in this Maronite cathedral. So speaking about the Catholic population in Cyprus, the Cypriot Catholics are presently about 4.5% of the population, or around 38,000. For the most part of the Latin Rite. However, there are also Maronite Catholics present, which is the second largest community, around 1.5% of the population. And the smallest Cypriot Catholic community is the Catholic Armenian Rite. They date back to the 6th century. There are around 3,000 to 4,000 Armenian Catholics living in Cyprus today, mostly in the capital, Nicosia. Pope Francis is accompanied by song as he arrives at the front of the church. So Cypriot Catholics, as we were saying, the Latin Catholics arrived in the late 12th century. They arrived on the island after the Third Crusade in 1191, and as well as after the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin in 1187. And the Catholics departed from Jerusalem and fled to the island of Cyprus, which is geographically very close to the Middle East and is sometimes considered a bridge between East and West. The nation is an EU member. Its currency is the euro, along with the other 27 nations of the European Union bloc. And so Latin Catholics, they thrived in Cyprus until it was conquered by the Ottoman Empire in 1570 to 1573 was when that war took place. Thousands of Latin Catholics were killed in the Ottoman invasion, and the churches were converted to mosques, and the Latin Church in general was dissolved. However, quite a few thousand survived Ottoman rule, a large part thanks to the Franciscan order, which has been present in the island since its founding in the 13th century. And the Franciscans still play a central role in the local church today. The island of Cyprus fell under British rule and became part of the British Empire in 1878 and remained so until 1960. And the British Empire had a policy of tolerance, and this benefited the Catholic community and the Latin community. The various churches, the Latin Rite has at a political level a seat in Parliament in Cypriot Republic. And now we sit down, and the Pope has a seat, and he will likely be greeted by Cardinal Becciarai, the Patriarch, the Maronite Patriarch.
Beatissimo Padre, benvenuto a Cipro, l'isola dei santi, degli apostoli e dei martiri.
And I will offer a translation of Cardinal Rai's speech. Most Holy Father, the Cathedral Our Lady of Grace of the Maronite Eparchy of Cyprus is honored to welcome Your Holiness and your meeting with the consecrated men and women of the Catholic Church in this beloved island.
E ne attingono forza e coraggio. È mio onore anche darle un filiale e caloroso benvenuto.
It is my honor also to give you a filial and warm welcome on behalf of the Eparchy, His Excellency Selim Sfeir, of the clergy and the faithful, as well as my brother bishops who have come, like me, from Lebanon and represent our Patriarchal Synod, together with the Superior General of the Lebanese Maronite Order and the Superior General of the Antonine Maronite Religious.
Il figlio della consolazione secondo il Vangelo, fondatore e protettore della Chiesa di Cipro,
we welcome you to follow on the footsteps of the Apostle Barnabas, who helped found this community. We assure you of our appreciation for your paternal presence, which offers us guidance in unity. We welcome you with great appreciation and gratitude. And we are all here to hear your enlightening words and to receive your apostolic blessing. Your presence, Holy Father, in our troubled region is a message of hope, in a sign of reconciliation that could overcome hatred, division, and war. Your Holiness, you are the most prominent promoter of human dignity and harmonious living among communities. However, sadly, on this island is divided with a firm hope for a reunification. We hear in this moment the echo of the Maronites in this island. The beginning of the migration from Lebanon of Maronites was in the 8th century, well before the arrival of the Crusaders in 1192. Already in 1121, the Patriarch appointed a superior to the convent of St. John Chrysostom, where several Maronite religious lived. In the 13th century, the number of Maronites was 80,000, distributed in 60 villages, which decreased in 1508 under the Ottoman Empire to only 39 due to various difficulties. The first Maronite bishop was elected in 1310. The superior general of the Lebanese Maronite order sent 2 religious here in 1735 to found a convent and a school. Today, after the events of 1974 and the division of the island, the number of Maronites comes to about 7,000, with 10 parishes who pray for peace and the desire to return to the homeland of their fathers. In Asomatos, Agia Maria, Carpatia, and Kormakitis. The Maronites of Cyprus they have very good relations with the Latin and Armenian communities and with the Greek Orthodox Church, especially with its Archbishop. They also have excellent relations with the Presidency of the Republic, the ministers and deputies, as well as with the diplomatic corps. The various communities of the welcoming island sing in unison, and with the psalmists say, "How good and sweet it is that brothers and sisters should live together." Your Holiness, we invoke your prayer and blessing, and we ask for the mediation of the Blessed Virgin Mary to accompany you now and forever in your apostolic journey. Welcome, your Holy Father, and thank you. The choir has just sung a traditional Cypriot song. And now we hear a testimony from a Franciscan sister, Antonia Piriptiptsi. She's a Franciscan missionary sister of the Sacred Heart, and will translate her words. Holy Father, we warmly welcome you to this island of Saints Barnabas and Paul, and of so many other saints who have contributed to the evangelization of the people of Cyprus. This evangelization has also been carried out through so many religious men and women who have gone before us and have given us priority to the education of poor children. This mission continues to this day in Catholic schools, which are an effective means of witnessing to God's love and cultivating human, Christian, and religious values. Your Holiness, there are only 3 fully operational Catholic schools on the island. The Holy Land College in Nicosia, which was founded in 1646. It belongs to the Franciscan Friars Minor. The St. Mary's School in Limassol, which will celebrate its centenary in 2023, belonging to the Franciscan Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart, and the Elementary School of St. Maroon in Anthopoli, attended mainly by Maronite students. Both the Holy Land College and St. Mary's School are open to boys and girls of all ethnicities, mentalities, cultures, and religions. It is a truly ecumenical meeting place, without any discrimination, where bridges are built, where students learn to respect each other in their diversity, to love each other, to help each other, to dialogue, to collaborate together, to build a better future. A future where everyone can live as brothers and sisters, without distinction of race, culture, religion, or language. In the recent past, there were still 3 other schools which unfortunately we were forced to abandon after the invasion of Turkish forces in 1974. Some of our older sisters tell with sorrow how they had to flee without delay to save their skins. They thought they would only have to be gone for one night and return the next day. That night lasted for 47 years.
Το 1974 έχει σημαδέψει τραυματικά τη μακραίωνη ειρηνική συνύπαρξη των Ελληνοκυπρίων χριστιανών.
The year 1974 marked a dramatic page in the centuries-old peaceful coexistence between Greek Cypriot Christian and Turkish Cypriot Muslim populations. The division of Cyprus radically changed not only the political and social order of the island, but also our mission in the occupied area in the north. In spite of various difficulties and dangers, the sisters, assisted by Maronite priests, have never ceased to be present, poor nuns among poor people, to help them spiritually and morally, and to ensure that the bells of some churches continue to ring.
Θα συνεχίσουν να χτυπούν. Οι αδελφές μας που προέρχονται από τον Κορμακίτη
Our original sisters of Kormakitis, Asomatos, Agia Maria, Marina, and Carpatia are advancing in years, while we see that there is a lack of Catholic families, because after the division of the island, they are scattered everywhere. Moreover, as in many countries of Europe, also in Cyprus, the demographic crisis and the secularization of daily life keep our young people from being very available to the life of service in the church. This is an important challenge, which we face with prayer and with witness, so that all the beauty of following the Lord Jesus may appear through us. It is better to witness to the beauty of following the Lord Jesus more closely and to testify to it every day, despite the difficulties we encounter. Your Holiness, our province of St. Elizabeth of Hungary of the Franciscan Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart has begun the preparatory itinerary for the 150th anniversary Jubilee of our presence in the Middle East, which we will celebrate next year in 2022. The theme we will address will be enriched by the experiences of the past. Let us live the present with confidence and courageously face the challenges of the future. This is our program for the Jubilee of 150 years of presence and mission in the Middle East. We promise to live this time of grace as a space of renewal that we await from God, the giver of all good, all vocation and all faithfulness.
Όλες τις ποιμαντικές και εκπαιδευτικές μας δραστηριότητες στην προστασία του Αγίου Ιωσήφ και της Αϊπαρθένου Μαρίας.
As the year of St. Joseph draws to a close, we wish to renew our personal and communal enthusiasm for the service of the Gospel. And in your presence, Holy Father, let us entrust all our pastoral and educational activities to St. Joseph and Blessed Mary. Thank you for being here among us. Sister Antonia Piriptiti, the Franciscan missionary of the Sacred Heart, goes and salutes, greets the Pope, and we hear a traditional hymn from the choir.
Litros evas από τον εχθρό Your Holiness, the particular geographical location of Cyprus makes it the crossroad of Asia, Africa, and Europe, and a meeting place for various cultures and religious heritages.
This is Sister Perpetua Nien Nien Lu.
By the presence of the apostles Barnabas and Paul, their spirit of zeal continues to be transmitted through our efforts to bear witness to God's compassion for all his people. The 4 female institutes of consecrated life present here in Cyprus: Franciscan missionaries of the Sacred Heart, Sisters of St. Joseph of the Apparition, Sri Lankan Sisters of Perpetual Help, and Antonite Maronite Sisters, are currently engaged in a number of pastoral, educational, and charitable apostolates on the island. Much of our work consists in defending the basic human rights of those in need and of migrant workers, who frequently must bear the burden of disproportionate debts, as well as harsh and unfair treatment, including unpaid wages, excessively long working hours, verbal and physical abuse, and other forms of discrimination. All too often, such injustice give rise to poor mental or physical health, which hamper people's ability to achieve their dreams of a better and more prosperous future for themselves and their children. In this context, we endeavor to restore human dignity by providing shelter and food, legalizing workers' situations, and helping them find potential employment and financial relief. Another vital work concerns the education of generations. We want to create a society that is more humane and more respectful of cultural and racial differences because of the religious ethics instilled in young people, who can transmit the values of the gospel after putting them into practice in their own lives. Our future will be all the more vibrant. In our mission, the establishment of dignified care centers for the elderly, who are very vulnerable due to current social conditions, and the expense of healthcare, has been extremely important. At the same time, our congregations continue to show their compassion of Christ towards all who are sick, suffering, and excluded. The religious of the island also work in close contact with their parishes, providing many pastoral services that assist them in carrying out the celebration of the Eucharist, sacramental preparation, and the transmission of the church teaching. All this contributes to the formation of mature and responsible parishioners who will continue to live the gospel and in turn build up the other members of the church and society. Our efforts are inspired by Your Holiness' pastoral vision of going to the peripheries. Despite obstacles and difficulties, with the help of divine providence, we continue the Lord's work of spreading the gospel and making God's word, planted by the apostle Barnabas and Paul, fruitful and vibrant in Cyprus today.
That was Sister Perpetua Nien Nien Lu, sister of St. Joseph of the Apparition. She greets the Holy Father. And the choir sings another hymn. as we were talking earlier about the Catholic community in Cyprus, another important element of the Catholic community is the Maronite community. This is the second largest Catholic community in Cyprus, making up around 1.5% of the population. As Cardinal Rai mentioned, the Maronites arrived early in the 8th century and then grew also after the Third Crusade in the 12th century. However, numbers dropped off significantly after the 16th century and the Ottoman takeover. But then again, after independence, many Lebanese, who are mainly Maronite Catholics, arrived in Cyprus in 1975 after war broke out in Lebanon. In terms of cultural distinctiveness, the Maronites of Cyprus are predominantly native Greek speakers, consider themselves Greek Cypriots. However, they also speak several different languages, as they have throughout their history, which include Syriac, Arabic, French, and Italian. The smallest of the Catholic communities in Cyprus is the Armenian Catholic community, and this presence dates back to the 6th century, when Armenian war prisoners were transferred to the island. More Christian Armenians, mainly belonging to the Armenian Orthodox Apostolic Church, came over in the following centuries, especially in the 13th century. And during the British rule, in the late 1800s to the first half of the 20th century, the Catholic Armenians benefited from that time. More of them arrived in Cyprus during World War I, and also after the partition of Palestine in 1948, and as well after the war in Lebanon. This is the Armenian Catholic community. Around 3,000 live in there presently. And now we hear a reading from the Acts of the Apostles. Now, there were in the church at Antioch prophets and teachers: Barnabas, Simeon, who was called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene, Manaen, who was a close friend of Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul. While they were worshipping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, "Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them." Then, after completing their fasting and prayer, they laid hands on them and sent them off. And then sent by the Holy Spirit. And here they set off for Cyprus. The word of the Lord. This was a reading from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 13, verses 1 through 5. that hymn from the choir, now we prepare to hear Pope Francis's words.
Cari sacerdoti, religiosi,
Your Beatitudes,
cari catechisti,
dear
fratelli,
brother
sorelle.
bishops, dear priests, men and women religious, and catechists, dear brothers and sisters,
Sono felice di essere
Caerete,
a voi.
greetings.
Desidero esprimere la mia gratitudine al cardinale Brutus Rai per le parole che mi ha rivolto.
I'm pleased to be here with you. I express my gratitude to Cardinal Becera Boutros Rai for his kind words,
Grazie a tutti voi.
and I cordially greet Patriarch Pierbattista Pizzaballa. I'm grateful to all of you for your ministry and your service, especially to you, sisters, for the educational work you carry on in the schools, so well attended by the children of the island, which are places of encounter, dialogue, and instruction in the art of building bridges. Thank you all for your closeness to people, especially in social and work settings where it is more difficult. I share with you my joy in visiting this land and journeying as a pilgrim in the footsteps of the great apostle Barnabas, a son of this people, a disciple who loved Jesus and a fearless herald of the gospel. As he visited the emerging Christian communities, he saw the grace of God at work. He rejoiced and urged everyone to remain faithful to the Lord with steadfast purpose. I come with the same desire to see the grace of God at work in your church and in your land, to rejoice with you at the wondrous things the Lord has done, and to encourage you to persevere always, without growing weary or discouraged. God is greater. God is greater than our own contradictions. Strive forward. In looking at you, I see the wealth of your diversity. Very diverse. I greet the Maronite Church, which arrived on the island in successive stages over the centuries, and frequently passing through many trials, has maintained the faith. When I think of Lebanon, I am greatly concerned for the crisis it is facing. I am sensitive to the sufferings of a people wearied and tested by violence and adversity. I carry in my prayer the desire for peace that rises from the heart of that country. I thank you for all that you are doing here in Cyprus. The cedars of Lebanon are mentioned many times in Scripture as examples of beauty and grandeur. Yet, even a great cedar rises from its roots and grows slowly. You are those roots transplanted to Cyprus in order to spread the fragrance and beauty of the gospel. Thank you. I also greet the Latin Church, present here for more than a millennium, which over time has witnessed the enthusiasm of the faith increase, together with her children. Now, thanks to the presence of many of our migrant brothers and sisters, it appears as a polychrome people, a true point of encounter between different ethnicities and cultures. This face of the Church reflects Cyprus's own place in the European continent. It is a land of golden fields and an island caressed by the waves of the sea, but above all else, a history of intertwined peoples, a mosaic of encounters. The Church, as Catholic Universal, is an open space in which all are welcomed and gathered together by God's mercy and invitation to love. None of us were called here to be proselytists, to proselytize, but we are all called to be, we are all called by the mercy of God, which never tires to come to us. The roots of our vocation are there in the mercy of God. Never forget that. The Lord never deludes us, never misleads us.
Non ci sono e non ci siano muri nella Chiesa cattolica, per favore.
Walls do not and should not exist in the Catholic Church. The Church is a common home, a place of relationships and of coexistence in diversity. One person may think of something in one way, the sister may think of it in another. But there's diversity among us. But there in diversity we find richness. And in that diversity there's richness and life. And who gives life? The Holy Spirit. He is the author of diversity and harmony. This was St. Basil said this. The diversity of gifts is the harmony of the Church. Dear brothers and sisters, I want to reflect with you about St. Barnabas, your brother and patron, using two words that describe his life and mission. The first word is patience. Of Barnabas, it is said that he was a great man of faith and wisdom, chosen by the church in Jerusalem, the mother church, we could say, as the person best suited to visit a new community, that of Antioch, made up of a number of recent converts from paganism. He was sent to go and see what was happening, to scout things out. There he found people coming from another world, another culture, another religious sensibility. They were people who had just had a life-changing experience. Theirs was a faith full of enthusiasm, yet still fragile. They were people who had they knew how to wait. They were waiting for the tree to grow. In this situation, Barnabas' attitude was one of utmost patience. The patience to keep moving forward, the patience to enter into the lives of hitherto unknown individuals, the patience to accept what was new without rushing to judgment. His was the patience of discernment that is capable of perceiving the signs of God's work in every place, the patience to study other cultures and traditions. Above all else, Barnabas had the patience of accompaniment. We grow by being accompanied. He did not overwhelm the fragile faith of the newcomers by taking a rigorous or inflexible approach, or by making excessive demands about the observance of precepts. He allowed it to grow. He accompanied it. He took them by the hand and dialogued with them. He wasn't scandalized, just like a father and a mother are not scandalized by their children, but allow them and help them to grow. So, proselytism within the church does not work. We need to allow someone to grow, to accompany them. Barnabas was a man of patience. Dear brothers and sisters, we need a patient church. A church that does not allow itself to be upset and troubled by change, but calmly welcomes newness and discerns situations in the light of the gospel. The work you are carrying out on this island as you welcome new brothers and sisters arriving from other shores of the world is precious. Like Barnabas, you too are called to foster a patient and attentive outlook to be visible and credible signs of the patience of God, who never leaves anyone outside the home, bereft of His loving embrace.
La Chiesa in Cipro ha queste braccia aperte, accoglie, integra.
The Church of Cyprus has these same open arms. It welcomes, integrates, and accompanies. This is also an important message for the Church throughout Europe, marked by the crisis of faith. And we don't need to be impulsive. We don't need to be aggressive or nostalgic or whiny. We need to go ahead. We need to march forward, reading the signs of the times as well as the signs of the crisis. We need to start proclaiming the gospel patiently, above all to the next generation. I would ask you, my dear brother bishops, to be pastors, patient in closeness, be tireless in seeking God in prayer, in encountering your priests, and encountering with respect and kindness your brothers and sisters of other Christian confessions, in encountering the faithful wherever they may be. To you, dear priests, I would say, be patient with the faithful, always ready to encourage them, untiring ministers of God's forgiveness and mercy. Never be harsh judges, but loving fathers. When I read the parable of the prodigal son, the older brother was a rigorous judge, harsh judge, but the father was merciful, just like our Heavenly Father. He's always waiting for us to return. Last year, a group of young people who do pop music and concerts wanted to do the prodigal son, and put together with pop music, with dialogues. It was beautiful. But the most beautiful thing was the final speech. When the prodigal son goes to a friend and says, "I can't go like this. I need to go back to I need to go home. My father might go slam the door in my face and throw me away. So how do I go home?" But you know, my brother will get all mad. He'll get this is the pop concert going, theater going, running to the end, and so his friend told the prodigal son to write to his father and say, tell him you want to come home. I want to, if you want to welcome me home, this is the prodigal son to the father, put a white flag outside and say, that way, before I get home, whether you want me to come home or not. That way I know whether you want me there. And that act, that gesture, the son starts walking toward his father's home, and when he goes around the corner, he sees his father's home, and it was full of white sheets, not just one, but sheets everywhere to show his welcome. This is God for us. He's never tired, never tires of pardoning us, forgiving us. If I ever think that He does not, please be quiet. Fathers, dear priests, don't be rigorous in confession. If you see a person in difficulty, just say it's okay. No, this is not a wide sleeve. This is a heart of a father, like the heart of God the Father. The work that God carries out in every person's life is sacred. And so let us be enthused about it. Given the multifaceted variety of your people, patience also means having open ears and hearts for different spiritual sensibilities, different ways of expressing the faith, different cultures. The Church does not want to reduce everything to uniformity, but to integrate all different cultures, all different types of mentalities with patience, with maternal patience, because the Church is mother. This is what, with the grace of God, we want to achieve on the synodal path, through patient prayer and patient listening for a Church docile to God and open to humanity. Patience is one of the aspects of Barnabas. There's a second important aspect in Barnabas' history that I would like to highlight. His encounter with Paul of Tarsus and their fraternal friendship, which led them to carry out their mission together. After Paul's conversion, they were all afraid of him, for they did not believe he was a disciple. In the book of the Acts of the Apostles, it says a beautiful thing there. It said, Barnabas took him, brought him to the community, recounted what had happened to him, and vouched for him. Let us listen to those words. He took him with him. They evoke Jesus' own mission, for he took the disciples with him through the streets of Galilee and took upon himself our humanity, wounded by sin. His was an approach of friendship and sharing of life. Taking with oneself, taking upon oneself means taking up the history of others, taking time to get to know them without labeling them, bearing down them, please, without labeling, bearing them on our shoulders when they are tired or wounded, as the Good Samaritan did. This is called fraternity, and this is our second word. The first is patience, the second is fraternity. Barnabas and Paul, as brothers, journeyed together to proclaim the gospel, even amid persecution. At Antioch, for a whole year they met with the church and taught a large number of people. Later, by the will of the Holy Spirit, both were set apart for a much greater mission. And so they sailed to Cyprus. The Word of God sped along and grew not only because of their human qualities, but above all because they were brothers in the name of God. And their fraternity radiated the commandment of love. Brothers and sisters, every life is different. We all have the same dignity. Later, as happens in life, an unexpected event occurred. The Acts of the Apostles tell us that the two had a sharp disagreement and they went their separate ways. Brothers can argue and at times fight. Yet Paul and Barnabas did not go their separate ways for personal reasons, but because they disagreed about their ministry, about how to carry out their mission. And in this regard, they had different ideas. Among other things, Barnabas wanted to bring the young Mark on their mission, but Paul did not. They argued, yet from some later letters of Paul, we see that there was no rancor between the two of them. Paul even wrote to Timothy, who had to join him shortly after, "Do your best to come to me soon. Get Mark, and bring him with you, for he is very useful in serving me." This is what fraternity in the church means. It does us good to discuss about things, We can argue about visions, sensibilities, and differing ideas.
Discutere mai, eh? No, tutti quando c'è questa pace
Whenever there's
troppo rigorista
a
che se
false peace that's too rigorous,
in una famiglia i fratelli discutono.
something's not right. In a family, people discuss, they argue.
Dividono.
They have different ideas about life.
Io sospetto che coloro che non discutono
I suspect that those who don't argue
hanno agende nascoste, sempre.
have a hidden agenda.
Questa è la fraternità della Chiesa.
This is the fraternity of the church. And this is what it means in the church. We can argue about visions. In certain cases, saying certain things frankly to each other can help, for it is an opportunity for growth and change. Yet let us always remember, we argue not for the sake of fighting or imposing our own ideas, but in order to express and live the vitality of the Spirit who is love and communion. We may argue, yet we remain brothers and sisters. I remember that when I was a kid, there were 5 of us. We would argue amongst ourselves, and strongly at times. But then at the table we were all together, arguing within a family, like a mother. Within our mother church, we can argue. Too bad this speech is quite long. Dear brothers and sisters, we need a fraternal church, one that is an agent of fraternity in our world. Here in Cyprus, there are many spiritual and ecclesial sensibilities, different backgrounds and histories, different rites and traditions. Yet, we should not experience diversity as a threat to identity. We should not be jealous or defensive. If we fall into this temptation, then fear grows, and fear gives rise to distrust. And distrust leads to suspicion, and then sooner or later to conflict. We are brothers and sisters loved by a single Father. You are immersed in the Mediterranean, a sea rich in history, a sea that has become the cradle of many civilizations, a sea from which today many individuals, peoples, and cultures from every part of the world still disembark. By your spirit of fraternity, you can remind everyone, and Europe as a whole, that we need to work together to build a future worthy of humanity, to overcome divisions, to break down walls, to dream and work for unity. We need to welcome and integrate one another, and to walk together as brothers and sisters, all of us. I thank you for what you are and what you do, for the joy with which you proclaim the gospel, and for the effort and sacrifice with which you strive patiently to embody and spread its message. This was the path traced out for you by the holy apostles Paul and Barnabas. It is my hope that you will always be a patient church that discerns, that does not become afraid, but discerns together, and accompanies and integrates a fraternal church that makes room for others and can disagree while always remaining united. We grow in arguments. I bless you, each of you, and ask you, please, to continue to pray for me. Evcharisto. Thank you. We hear the litanies prayed ahead of the Pope's Apostolic blessing.
وعليك رجعنا تشفعي فينا يا عذراء وتحنني على موتانا بجمال شرفك على العالمين حين ظهر منك ظهوران مبين اطلبي منه للخاطئين المراحم لدهري داهرين لا تهملينا يا حنونا يا مملوءا كل نعمة بل خلصي عبيدك أجمعين لنشكرك داهرين
Per intercessione della Beata Vergine Maria, Madre di Dio,
We hear the Pope's blessings.
Padre, Figlio e Spirito Santo.
And receiving the Pope's Apostolic blessing with the icon, this event draws toward its end. And that concludes this live broadcast of Pope Francis and his meeting with the clergy, religious, and lay people of Cyprus as he receives a gift from the local community. And please do remember that this event is available on our Vatican YouTube channel and our Vatican News portal. And there you can also find summaries of the Holy Father's speeches and homilies, as well as reports on his main activities. You can find us at www.vaticannews.va. Please be sure to find us also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for up-to-date information on the Pope's 35th Apostolic Journey abroad and other news from the Vatican and the Catholic Church around the world. Thanks again to all of you who have joined us on local radio stations around the world or on Catholic TV, Catholic Faith Network, Shalom World Television Networks, USA, EWTN TV, Shalom TV India, Salt and Light TV, At Madarshan TV, and Luminous Radio. Until next time, on behalf of Vatican Media, I'm Devin Watkins, wishing you every blessing. Laudetur Jesus Christus, praised be Jesus Christ.
bless you. Bless you. Άγιε Πατέρα, είναι ιδιαίτερη τιμή, περισσότερη χαρά, αλλά και ικανοποίηση που σας καλωσορίζω στην Κυπριακή Δημοκρατία. Η απόφαση σας να επισκεφτείτε μια μικρή σε μέγεθος χώρα, αλλά μια χώρα που διαδραμάτισε ρόλο στην πορεία του χριστιανισμού, αποδεικνύει το μεγαλείο της δικής σας προσωπικότητας να αποδίδετε τη σημασία που πρέπει στους λαούς που υποφέρουν σε χώρες που δέχονται παραβίαση του διεθνούς δικαίου ανεξαρτήτως μεγέθους. Θέλω εκ μέρους του κυπριακού λαού, του συνόλου του κυπριακού λαού, να εκφράσω την ευγνωμοσύνη μου, να σας καλωσορίσω και να ευχηθώ ό,τι καλύτερο στο ποιμαντικό σας έργο.
Ecco, signor Presidente,
Κύριε Πρόεδρε,
su palabra de bienvenida
τα λόγια σας ευχαριστώ για τα λόγια σας
y la calidez de su bienvenida.
και για το καλωσόρισμα τόσο θερμό.
El protocolo de la calidez es un protocolo
Το
de
πρωτόκολλο,
hermano.
το θερμό πρωτόκολλο είναι ένα αδελφικό πρωτόκολλο.
Y esto llega al corazón.
Και αυτό φτάνει και μες στην καρδιά.
So some of them will wait at the front.
να κάνουμε ένα στάντα τι να φύγουμε. Απλά να έχουμε ένα προεδρικό μπροστά μας. Εκεί να κάνουμε live κάτι, απλά ένα στάντα που να φύγουμε και να φύγουμε. It's gonna talk.
Laudetur Jesus Christus. Praised be Jesus Christ. A very warm welcome to you on behalf of Vatican Media, Vatican Radio, and all of my colleagues here at the Vatican's Dicastery for Communication. I'm Devin Watkins, and it's my privilege to provide the commentary for this live broadcast of Pope Francis's meeting with the civil authorities and diplomatic corps of Cyprus. This is the second event on the Pope's Apostolic journey to the Mediterranean island nation of Cyprus, where he arrived earlier this afternoon. On whatever platform, medium, or device you may be following this event, please know that we are happy that you could join us. We especially welcome our friends of Catholic TV, Catholic Faith Network, Shalom World Television Networks USA, EWTN TV, Shalom TV India, Salt and Light TV, Atma Darshan TV, and Luminous Radio, as well as all of you joining us on local radio stations around the world. This broadcast is also available live right now on our Vatican Media audio app and on Vatican News Portal, which you can access at www.vaticannews.va, and on our Facebook page. Pope Francis is currently in Nicosia, the capital of Cyprus, and he is meeting in the ceremonial hall of the presidential palace. We currently see the facade of the presidential palace. If you're joining us on TV, right now the Pope's meeting with the president, Nikos Anastasiadis, as president of the Republic of Cyprus, and he will soon be meeting with the authorities, civil society, and diplomatic corps. His meeting with the Cypriot president is private, where there will be an exchange of gifts, and the Pope will meet the entourage of the president and his family. And then afterwards the president, when the public event starts, will open and welcome the Pope officially to Cyprus, and Pope Francis will speak to the Greek Cypriot civil society. One of the themes of the Pope's Apostolic journey, which this is the second event, as I mentioned earlier, he met with the Catholic clergy and religious of Cyprus. That was his first event. This is his second. One aspect of this event is the Cyprus dispute. It's a long-running dispute between the Greek Cypriot and the Turkish Cypriot communities. The this dispute originally began with the occupation of the island by the British Empire it took over from the Ottoman Empire in 1878 and was subsequently annexed in 1914. The Cyprus is made up of Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. In 2001, there were around 77% of the population were Greek Cypriots, and around 18% of the island were Turkish Cypriots. So there have been several international complications from this dispute, of this so-called Cyprus issue or dispute, which stretch beyond the boundaries of Cyprus and involve the guarantor powers under the Zurich and London agreements. These other nations involved in this dispute are Greece, Turkey, and the United Kingdom, along with the United Nations, the European Union, and unofficially the United States. So the current phase of this Cyprus issue began after the 1974 Turkish military invasion and occupation of the northern part of Cyprus, by the northern third of the island. In that area, a few years later, the local Turkish Cypriot population declared the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. However, only Turkey is the only government to recognize that republic. The Republic of Cyprus is recognized by the international community, and although the north is under the de facto administration of the self-declared Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. So in 1974 there was a coup d'etat, a government takeover in Cyprus. It was begun by the Greek military junta, which followed only 5 days later, was followed by the Turkish invasion of the island. And so as a result, the two communities and the guarantor countries committed themselves to finding a peaceful solution to the dispute. And the United Nations maintains a buffer zone, which are known as the Green Line, and this is to avoid any further intercommunal tensions and hostilities. So this so-called Green Line separates the southern areas, which is the Republic of Cyprus, from the northern areas. Recent years have seen a warming of relations between Greek and Turkish Cypriots, though talks continually been stalled and restarted. Ahead of the Pope's departure, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, spoke to Vatican media, and he discussed this. He mentioned this, the Cyprus dispute. Cardinal Parolin, speaking about the Pope's visits, called the Cyprus dispute a very, very delicate and worrisome situation. He noted that earlier this year, the latest round of talks between the Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot populations and governments that took place in Switzerland took place under they were UN-backed talks. However, this most recent round of negotiations did not produce satisfactory or concrete results and ended with a stalemate. Cardinal Parolin said that Pope Francis is likely to reiterate the position and the hope of the Holy See, that the Cyprus problem can be solved through a sincere and fair dialogue between the parties involved, while always taking into account the good of the whole island. Cardinal Parolin said the Pope is likely to confirm the Holy See's position, and reiterating it on site with the hope that it will have a different effect than just proclaiming it from afar. Earlier, when the Pope met with, there was a brief public moment of his meeting with the President, Anastasiadis. The Pope thanked the President for his words of welcome and for the warmth of his welcome that he's already received in the short hours since he's been in Cyprus. And he said that his warm mannerisms and warm protocol was a protocol of a brother. And he said that this welcome that he has received has touched his heart. Going back to Cardinal Parolin's interview with Vatican Media ahead of the Pope's departure and arrival in Cyprus, he noted that Cyprus is a Mediterranean island. It sits on the eastern part of the Mediterranean. It's located just to the south of Turkey. It's west of Syria, northwest of the Gaza Strip, Israel and Lebanon, and north of Egypt, and southeast of Greece. And Cardinal Parolin mentioned that the Mediterranean creates distances, but it also brings the peoples around the Mediterranean Sea closer. And he mentioned that the efforts of all the countries that border the Mediterranean, which count Northern Africa, the Middle East, Europe, that they should all the peoples around it should be transformed, and the Mediterranean should become a space that divides, from a space that divides into a place of encounter. However, he lamented that currently the Mediterranean provides the opposite phenomenon, that at the geopolitical level there are many tensions that have the Mediterranean at their center. He mentioned specifically the phenomenon of migration, one of the topics that Pope Francis is likely to touch upon and speak about during this apostolic journey to Cyprus and then later to Greece, where he will visit the island of Lesbos, which was a hot point in the migration crisis of 2015 and 16, where many migrants showed up across the Mediterranean and tried to enter Europe through Greece. There's still quite a few migrants who seek to enter the EU, because Cyprus is an EU member nation whose currency is the euro. They seek to enter through Cyprus as well and to request asylum. Cardinal Parolin said that there are many problems that plague the Mediterranean, like climate change, the migration, as we mentioned, as well as the pandemic. And said these are the major phenomenons of problems and difficulties that the people of Europe and of the Mediterranean must present a common front and have a shared common multilateral approach to solve these problems. Cardinal Parolin also said that Pope Francis' trip to Cyprus seeks to speak to all of Europe and to invite Europe to rediscover its roots and find its unity beyond the different visions that can coexist. At the same time, the location is significant because Cyprus is often considered a gateway or bridge between East and West, as it lays so close to the Middle East in the Mediterranean, as well as being fully a part of Europe. And so the Pope's seeking to speak to all of humanity, according to Cardinal Parolin, saying that the phenomenon of migration specifically calls into question and highlights our humanity. He said how we approach this reality, the reality of people on the move who flee their homes, is also an expression of how we approach people. And lately he noted that the Pope has insisted a lot on this point, and it's also linked to his visit to Lesbos, the Moria camp refugees that is set up or was set up on that island. Now it's a receiving center, though most migrants and refugees or asylum seekers have left that Greek island of Lesbos after the camp burned down. So Cardinal Parolin said that Pope Francis's apostolic journey is a return to the fonts, the sources of our humanity. It's also a return to the Christian roots of Europe, because the saints and the apostles Paul and Barnabas, the Acts of the Apostles mentions that Paul and Barnabas were chosen by the community, the early Christian community, they were given a mandate and sent as missionaries to Cyprus and to evangelize. Paul, when he arrived, converted the Roman governor, because it was part of the Roman Empire at the time in the 1st century. He converted the Roman governor, Sergius Paulus, I believe, to Christianity. And Barnabas stayed on and was, some consider the first bishop of Cyprus. And as we await Pope Francis and the public portion of this event with the civil authorities and diplomatic corps of Cyprus, we can I might mention that I spoke to a Greek Cypriot he spoke to us here at Vatican Media about the anticipation that the people of Cyprus have ahead of the Pope's arrival. He expressed that they were excited, and this man was a member of the Maronite community, which is the second largest portion of Catholic community, Maronite Catholics. He mentioned he was involved in preparing the Pope Benedict's visit to Cyprus in 2010, and he said that this man named Ninos Josephides, he sings in a choir that will welcome the Pope tomorrow during the Mass at the stadium, GSP Stadium. He says that he sings in this choir and that it offers kind of a cross-section of the Catholic community in Cyprus, mentioning that there are quite a few nationalities there because there have been so many migrants. There are Cypriot Catholic Maronites, there are Latin Rite Catholics, there are many Lebanese Maronites, and quite a few Catholic workers, a lot from foreign Catholic workers from the Philippines and from other nations who come there to work. Earlier, when the Pope was meeting with the religious and clergy of Cyprus, one of the sisters who spoke mentioned that a large part of the religious's job there is to work with migrants and to protect their rights and to speak for them so that their basic human rights are protected and that they are not that their work is repaid and that they're not used and discarded. This is part of the work of the Catholic community. One aspect of the Catholic community, and that has to do with the Cyprus dispute, is the displacement of many Maronite Catholics. A lot of the Maronite Catholics Maronite Catholics arrived in Cyprus as early as the 8th century, but especially after the 12th century, after the Third Crusade and the fall of Jerusalem, many Catholics were fled to the island of Cyprus. And a lot of the Maronite Catholics who have a special link to Lebanon, they lived in the northern part of the country in 4 villages that were taken over and became part of they were north of the Green Line now, and so they've been cut off from the rest of the community. Many of the Maronites fled to the south and fled. This was 47 years ago, and this man I spoke to, Mr. Josephides, said that many of the Maronite Catholics are refugees in their own country. He said they feel they're fully Greek Cypriots. They feel proud of their heritage, but that they were unable for up until around 2010, for nearly 40 years, to visit their homes in their former homes and their parishes there in these 4 villages. And only after 2010 were they able to return there and visit the communities, rebuild some of the churches that were there. There's only one village that actually has a few Maronite Catholics left in the Turkish part, the northern part of the island. One of them has around 100 elderly people in Carpathia. No, excuse me, in Kormaktikis. And then there are around only 6 or 7 Maronite Catholics left in Carpathia. The rest of them live in the southern part in Nicosia, and this Ninos Josephides, told us that unless Maronite Catholics can go back to their villages at some point and return, because they've been kind of spread out through the country, that he feels that the Maronite community might not be able to survive for many years to come. He mentioned statistics that detail the number of mixed marriages that happen between Maronites and Orthodox Christians, who are the majority of Cypriots, adding that he does not criticize the practice because, as he said, love is love, we're all Christians. He's just highlighting the fact that there's quite the Maronite community faces this slow, the threat of a slow attrition and dying out because they are no longer able to gather together. They no longer have their traditional villages. He also mentioned that on Saturday, in a couple of days, that the Lebanese Patriarch Cardinal Bechara Rai, who's there in Cyprus, in Nicosia with Pope Francis, he will be taking several of the community of Maronite Catholics to visit some of these northern villages, if they receive permission. As we continue, the video has returned. We can see Pope Francis meeting and exchanging gifts with Cypriot President Nikos Anastasiadis.
Την ελάχιστη μέσα από αυτά τα μικρά δώρα, ως ελάχιστο δείγμα της.
He's mentioning that with these small gifts, that he wishes to express his appreciation for the Pope's visit. These are lefkarakit,
τέχνη που αναπτύχθηκε αιώνες πριν, τον 14ο αιώνα.
Stitching. It's a type of art that began in the 14th century. That began in the Lefkara village. And so that's one of them, he said, is to cover the altar. The other is to cover the chalice at Mass. And the other one is a bookmarker to mark the page of the Gospel.
Και
The other gift is a silver container that has water, rose water, and it's a sign of welcoming and inviting a foreigner when they visit.
πρώτη έκδοση γραμματοσύμου για την εδώ επίσκεψή σας.
La prima pubblicazione la prima stampa di un francobollo per la sua visita.
And this, the final gift that the Cypriot President Nikos Anastasiadis offers the Pope is the first printing or first production of stamps that are to celebrate his visit. The first, says the Pope, is a formella, like a bronze replica of his visit. It says in Latin, Cyprus and Greece visit. The Pope also is giving President Anastasiadis several copies of his encyclical letters and apostolic exhortations.
Είναι 8 διαφορετικές εγκύκλοι. Εντάξει.
He calls it a small library.
Grazie, mi considero fortunato.
The Pope even offered his translator a small gift in appreciation of her services. And yesterday evening, the President Anastasiadis, he spoke to Vatican media, our correspondent there in Nicosia, and to express his excitement about the Pope's visit. He called it an historic visit. He was speaking to our correspondent Christine Seuss, and he says that the Pope's coming sends a lot of messages of solidarity to the people who are suffering and people who are under distress and those who are under the occupation in the north. And this is so important, stressed President Anastasiadis, and so we thank the Holy Father for his decision to pay such a visit to Cyprus. We have also spoken to several Latin Rite Catholics in Cyprus. One who spoke to Vatican News was the Latin Rite Catholic representative in the Cypriot Parliament. So the Latin community has a representative, like a minister, in the Cypriot Parliament. And this person, her name is Antonella Mantovani, and she told Vatican News that she is very happy that the Pope is coming, and that there is a lot of excitement that has been generated by this, not just Catholics on the island, but by the people in general, the general population. She said that also a lot of non-Catholics are expected to show up tomorrow for the Pope's Mass in the GSP Stadium. And she expressed the general appreciation for the Cyprus government and the Orthodox for accepting and welcoming the Pope's visit, as well as thanking the Orthodox Archbishop for inviting the Pope to come. The Latin Rite Catholics in Cyprus number around 30 to 40,000, in a population around a little over 500,000, I believe. So she said it's not a very high number because saying that the community is sort of on the peripheries. But she says that it's nice to have the Pope's encouragement and support from the Church, so that the community realizes that they're not on their own, that they're a full part of the Church. She does mention, this representative in the Cypriot Parliament, that many people are getting older, and that the Latin communities has a long history on the island that dates back to the 8th century, and she said that the Pope's visit will help to remind the general population, which is majority Orthodox, that the Catholic community is an integral part of society, and that they do exist and have many social groups and social projects working on the island to help strengthen the links between the members of the Latin community and to make it a relevant and vibrant part of the social fabric of Cyprus. Just to go back over a little bit of history of the Catholic community in Cyprus, the Latin Rite Church they thrived on the island following. They arrived in waves over the centuries, even though the original community was founded in the 1st century by the apostles Barnabas and Paul, as I mentioned earlier. Around the 8th century, the first Latin Rite Catholics arrived on Cyprus, and then larger waves came in following the Third Crusade, which was in 1191, and earlier, a couple of years earlier, after the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin. As we recall, Jerusalem had been taken in one of the Crusades, and then it fell again in 1187 to Saladin, and the Christians who were there, Catholics, were expelled from Jerusalem and the Holy Land. Many of them fled to Cyprus, and so during that period from 12th century to the 16th century, Latin Catholics thrived in Cyprus until it was conquered by the Ottomans in 1570 and 1570 to 73, when thousands of Catholics were killed and their churches were converted to mosques, and the Latin Church in general was dissolved on the island. However, a few thousand survived thanks to the Franciscan order, which had been present in the island since its founding in the 13th century. And as Pope Francis enters the ceremonial hall at the presidential palace, he's greeted by an orchestra. He walks to the front. Latin Rite Catholics, as I was saying, survived during the Ottoman occupation, and then when the British took over the island and became part of the British Empire, there was a policy of tolerance put into place.
Ladies and gentlemen,
and so
distinguished guests, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Cyprus, Mr. Nikos Anastasiadis, and His Holiness Pope Francis are now entering the hall.
We hear the announcer in the ceremonial hall welcoming the Pope and the President into the ceremonial hall. The first to speak will be President Anastasiadis.
I have the honor to invite to the podium the President of the Republic, Mr. Nikos Anastasiadis, for his speech.
And the President approaches the podium. And prepares to officially welcome the Pope.
Άγιε Πατέρα,
Holy Father, speaking in Greek.
Σεβαστοί ιεράρχες, αποτελεί υψίστη τιμή για την πολιτεία, του ίδιου προσωπικά αλλά και ολόκληρου του λαού της Κύπρου.
It is a great honor for the state, as well as the entire people of Cyprus, to welcome you today to the Republic of Cyprus. There's a pause as the translator speaks, translates for the Pope.
Τα Ιταλικά. Ποιος είναι υπεύθυνος για το... Ναι, παρακαλώ.
Αν θέλετε να συνεχίσετε, εγώ κάνω τη μετάφραση. Δεν υπάρχει.
Καλέ, δέστε και τούτο, ναι. Ποιος είναι υπεύθυνος? Ποιος?
There's a pause as we wait for the translator to arrive.
Δεν είναι η διερμηνία, το μικρόφωνο.
It appears we're waiting for the translator to arrive so that Pope Francis can have his interpreter speak and translate the President's words. As we wait, I might mention that the gift that the medallion that the Pope offered to President Anastasiadis is a two-sided coin, and one side has the coat of arms of Pope Francis, and on the other side there is it celebrates Pope Francis' apostolic journey to Cyprus and Greece, and it features the apostles Paul and Barnabas, who were fundamental to the evangelization of these lands. Saint Barnabas is depicted on the left in this commemorative medal that the Pope gave President Anastasiadis. He's depicted with the gospel in one hand and a staff in the other, the symbols of his pilgrimage to proclaim the word. In the background, we can see the Church of Paphos. And now, President Anastasiadis continues his speech. Your visit, the second official visit of a primate of the Roman Catholic Church to our country, is a historic moment, arousing feelings of particular emotion and sincere joy.
Προκαλεί αισθήματα ιδιαίτερης συγκίνησης, αλλά ταυτόχρονα και ειλικρινούς χαράς. Η Κύπρος,
Cyprus is a place marked by the passage of great missionaries, and one of the first links in the Christian chain defined and determined the spread of Christianity.
Σημείο ειρηνικής συνέβρεσης λαών και μέρος ενός ευρύτερου γεωγραφικού χώρου στον οποίο πολιτισμοί και θρησκείες βρίσκονται σε μια διαλεκτική σχέση,
has always been a place of peaceful encounters of peoples and a part of a larger geographical area where cultures and religions are in a lasting peaceful relationship.
εδώ σήμερα εκπέμπει
In
μήνυμα
an age full of challenges, but of also various problems that afflict humanity, your presence here today
που επίσης στοχεύει
sends a message of inspiration, courage, and hope.
που αναπτύσσει η Αγία Έδρα. Μια αναντίλεκτα πολυσχηδής δραστηριότητα
These messages
η οποία εδράζεται σε σειρά πρωτοβουλειών
similar
που
to those
αναλαμβάνεται
spread also by the multifaceted international and wider diplomatic activity developed by the Holy See.
διαφορετικότητας, φυλής, θρησκείας ή φύλου, την πρόθεση του διαλόγου των κρατών, των θρησκειών και των πολιτισμών, τις σχέσεις καλής και αρμονικής κοινωνίας,
Incredibly
την επίλυση των διμερών
diversified activity that is based on these series of initiatives that it undertakes and
σε αυτή την μακραίη
implements,
παράδοση και προσφορά που η Αγία Έδρα
focusing on the themes that concern
τον
us.
σημαίνοντα ρόλο που διεθνώς διαδραματίζει, ένα ρόλο που ενίσχυσε η αγιότητα σας μέσα από το
This long history
φέροντας την δική σας φροντίδα στην πορεία της.
that Holy See has carried out,
που αποτυπώνει την ιδιαίτερη φροντίδα που
which
επιδείξατε
you, Your Holiness, have
ευθύς
underlined,
μετά την ενθρόνησή σας, προχωρώντας σε μεταρρύθμιση και ανανέωση της Εκκλησίας.
that you have been able to continue through your pastoral work, adding to this path your own personal imprint. This is confirmed, among other things, by the attention that you manifested immediately after the beginning of your pontificate for the reform and renewal of the Church, especially through the transformation of the theological and cultural orientation of Catholicism. Deeply committed to Christianity, you promote the principles and values you live by as a response to all blind fanaticism or intolerance. Principles and values that transcend individual and nationalistic interests and create a human-centered society. This includes the characterization that is rightly attributed to you as the Pope of the poor, since through your actions you show special sensitivity and care towards the protection and support of our fellow human beings, whatever they are challenged with, regardless of their religion or origin. Moreover, the insightful and effective action you take in addressing contemporary problems is indicative of your clear vision of the importance of humane and tolerant Christianity as a powerful means of promoting the values of peace, solidarity, and brotherhood among peoples. Evidence of your desire and special attention especially in the diligent activity in favor of the defense of human rights, the overcoming of poverty, the fight against terrorism, the fight against the expulsion of millions of people, and the issue of climate change. Holy Father, we as the Republic of Cyprus also share this same vision, realizing through the initiatives, proposals, and meaningful cooperation we develop through our territory. We seek to make Cyprus a strong pillar of stability, security, peaceful coexistence, and prosperity in our region. Your strong concern about the threat of environmental catastrophe, as expressed among others in your encyclical Laudato Si, is also ours. It is for this reason, and recognizing the consequences of climate change, that we have undertaken a regional initiative to bring together leading scientists and decision-makers in the region with the goal of developing workable and operational solutions to this problem.
Στο κέντρο υποδοχής των Ιησουητών στη Ρώμη αναφέρατε στους μετανάστες και πρόσφυγες που ζουν εκεί, τους είπατε,
Holy Father, during your recent visit to the Jesuit Reception Center in Rome, you said to the immigrants and refugees there, you know very well what it means to live without rights and freedoms. Too often we are faced with a total lack of humanity and indifference. The people of Cyprus have experienced to a high degree and know better than anyone else the pain of uprooting and being driven from their ancestral homes. As is characteristically recorded in the Acts of the Apostles, it was in Cyprus that the persecuted disciples also found refuge after the stoning of the first martyr, Stephen. In full accordance with your philosophy, we welcome, protect, promote, and integrate. As a government, we show full respect for the protection of the right to immigration and the human rights of immigrants. However, Cyprus has become the first country of destination by population share in the reception of refugees, but also of large flows of illegal immigrants through the occupied territories, and we have encountered countless difficulties in their management.
Υπέρμετρες δυσκολίες όσον αφορά την προστασία της δημογραφικής σύνθεσης του πληθυσμού. Είναι γι' αυτό το λόγο
It is for this reason that we would like to express our gratitude as a state for your initiative to transfer 50 immigrants from Cyprus to Italy. Your symbolic initiative is, first of all, a strong message about the need for a much-needed revision of the EU immigration policy, so that on the one hand there will be a fair division of the management of the problems, and on the other hand a more humane life for those who immigrate to the member states. Holy Father, it is an undoubtable fact from what I have said that we share common concerns and visions. Since the establishment of official diplomatic relations between us in 1973, the Holy See and the Republic of Cyprus have cooperated constructively on a number of issues. We strongly want and desire, as I emphasized to you during my visits to the Holy See in 2014 and 2019, now as then, the further strengthening and deepening of the excellent ties that characterize our bilateral relations and our mutually beneficial cooperation. A confirmation of our declared interest is the decision taken by the Council of Ministers last week to lease state land to the Vatican government with the aim of building an embassy in Nicosia.
Με σκοπό την ανέγερση πρεσβείας στη Λευκοσία.
Holy Father, as you rightly note regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, in the joint message for the care of creation that you published with Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew and Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the rapid spread of infection has meant that we depend on each other in our efforts to stay safe, adding that no one is safe until everyone is safe, because our actions really do affect others. If the coronavirus pandemic has shown us anything, it is that in order to respond effectively to the immediate, medium, and long-term effects of this and similar crises across state borders, it is of the utmost importance to take common measures and coordinated actions at the international level. For this, we must walk in solidarity and fraternity. Holy Father, allow me to briefly mention the problem of Cyprus, in which you are particularly interested. Undoubtedly, the ongoing illegal military occupation of 36% of the territory of the Republic of Cyprus by Turkey, the displacement of 30% of the population who have become refugees, the unresolved issue of the missing persons and the drama of their relatives, the plundering of cultural and religious monuments in the occupied territories are aspects that brutally offend humanity and rekindle the pain we have experienced and still feel. And referring to the destruction of our cultural heritage and of the monuments of the Orthodox, Latin, Armenian, Maronite churches, an issue to which, like others I have mentioned, you are particularly sensitive, I would like to emphasize that it is a heritage of all humanity and of world culture. As you yourself said, on the occasion of the conversion of St. Sophia into a mosque, the sea takes my mind far away. It takes us to Constantinople and Santa Sophia, and I am suffering greatly. Holy Father, 2 years ago in Abu Dhabi, together with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, you called for human brotherhood for the sake of peace. You spoke on behalf of the peoples who have lost their security, their peace, and their ability to live together, falling victim to the ravages of war. What I would like to assure you is that in spite of Turkey's long-standing intransigent stance that has not allowed an honest, sustainable, and just solution to be reached, we will continue our struggle for the restoration of human rights. The prevalence of the peace and reunification of all communities in Cyprus, Greek Cypriots, Turkish Cypriots, Maronites, Latins, and Armenians. This, in order to make Cyprus an example of peaceful coexistence and cooperation and successful reconstruction of a traumatic past, in full respect of all religious groups of the island. A truly sovereign and independent state in which democratic principles, human rights, the principles and values of the European ideal and the United Nations will be applied and respected. As you recently stated at the Interfaith Peace Conference, we cannot allow the lives of entire populations to become mere pawns in a game of power. To that end, our Turkish Cypriot compatriots liberated from the past should embrace prospects that offer all permanent residents and the entire territory the possibility of a reunited and fully independent homeland. Holy Father, your pacifist strength and your presence alongside all Cypriots stimulates and fortifies the efforts we make to solve our national problem. In addition to the firm stance we expect from the international community, we expect and trust in this: the support of the Holy See, and your personal strong intervention in order to reach a just, viable, and functional solution to the Cyprus problem on the basis of the resolutions and decisions of the United Nations. A strong intervention as a spiritual leader, as a man committed to the affirmation of peace in the world. Holy Father,
στο πλαίσιο της διαθρησκευτικής συνάντησης για την ειρήνη είχατε αναφέρει, δεν μπορούμε να επιτρέψουμε οι ζωές ολόκληρων λαών να γίνουν απλά πιόνια.
Today, perhaps more than ever, the international community, international relations, political and social life need ethical and moral values that effectively contribute to the improvement and promotion of transnational, interreligious, communicative, and interpersonal relations. In the midst of generalized decline, individualism, materialism, moral deconstruction and apathy, your wide-ranging action is the most effective model. Your arrival from Rome, the land where the tombs of the Apostle Peter and Paul are located, here in Cyprus, the occupied land, and the site of the tomb of the Apostle Barnabas, the land where they walked and taught together the principles and values of Christianity, is highly symbolic. It is a symbol that still guides our journey and our steps. Relying on one another in faith, as the apostles did, we must continue to work with absolute commitment to achieve our common goals for the future of Christianity, Europe, and all humanity. With only a few days left before the great Christian feast, at a time when divisions, tensions, and conflict plague our world, let us recognize the newborn Christ in the face of every persecuted and suffering human being beside us. Holy Father, before concluding and knowing your particular interest in soccer, I would like to wish your favorite team, San Lorenzo, which unfortunately is not having a good football year. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts, once again, Holy Father, for the priceless honor of your noble presence among us.
Πιστεύουμε στην παρέμβασή σας ως πνευματικού ηγέτη, ως ανθρώπου αφοσιωμένου στην επικράτηση της παγκόσμιας ειρήνης. Άγιε Πατέρα, εξοχότατη, σήμερα, ίσως όσο ποτέ άλλοτε η διεθνής κοινότητα, οι διεθνείς σχέσεις, η πολιτική και κοινωνική ζωή έχουν ανάγκη από πραγματικές ηθικές αξίες και πρότυπα, οι οποίες θα συμβάλλουν αποτελεσματικά στην βελτίωση και προαγωγή των διακρατικών, διαθρησκευτικών, διακοινωτικών και διανθρωπίνων σχέσεων. Εν μέσω γενικευμένης παρακμής, ατομικισμού, υλισμού, καθώς και της ηθικής αποδόμησης και απαξίας, η δική σας ευρύτερη δράση ανάγεται ως το πλέον ισχυρό πρότυπο. Η έλευση σας από τη Ρώμη, τη γη που βρίσκεται ο τάφος του Αποστόλου Πέτρου και ο τάφος του Αποστόλου Παύλου στην Κύπρο, τη γη που βρίσκεται υποκατοχή ο τάφος του Αποστόλου Βαρνάβα, τη γη που περπάτησαν και δίδαξαν μαζί τις αρχές και αξίες του χριστιανισμού, είναι πραγματικά για το παρουσία σας ισχυρού συμβολισμού. Συμβολισμός που καθοδηγεί τη δική μας πορεία,
to the symbols of Apostle Peter and Paul, as they walked together and taught together the principles and values of Christianity here in this land is highly symbolic that you've come to visit us here. So we work together and commit ourselves to achieve the goals, our common goals for the future of Christianity, of Europe, and of all humanity.
Αναγνωρίσουμε τον νεογέννητο Χριστό στο πρόσωπο κάθε κυνηγημένου και πονεμένου, στον κάθε άνθρωπο που είναι δίπλα μας. Σεβαστέ Πατέρα, νιώθω την ανάγκη να εκφράσω για ακόμη μια φορά την ευγνωμοσύνη και τις θερμές ευχαριστίες του ιδίου του Κυπριακού λαού της Κυπριακής Πολιτείας δια την διακεκριμένη τιμή της υψηλής επισκέψεως σας. Σας καλωσορίζω και θερμά σας ευχαριστώ για την εδώ παρουσία σας.
President Anastasiadis once again thanks Pope Francis for his visit and his presence in Cyprus. Shakes his hand as he finishes his speech.
To the podium, His Holiness Pope Francis for his speech.
Pope Francis approaches the podium, prepares to address the authorities, civil society, and diplomatic corps of Cyprus.
Signor Presidente della Repubblica, membri del governo e del corpo diplomatico, distinte autorità religiose e civili.
Well, Mr. President of the Republic, members of government and of the diplomatic corps, distinguished religious and civil authorities, illustrious representatives of society and the world of culture, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you most cordially, and I am most pleased to be present among you. I thank you, Mr. President, for the welcome you have offered me in the name of the entire population. I have come as a pilgrim to a country that is geographically small, but historically great, to an island that down the centuries has not isolated peoples, but brought them together, to a land whose borders are the sea, to a place that is the eastern gate of Europe and the western gate of the Middle East. You are an open door, a harbor that unites. Cyprus, as a crossroads of civilizations, has an innate vocation to encounter, favored by the welcoming character of the Cypriot people. We have just paid homage to the first president of this republic, Archbishop Makarios, and by that gesture I wished to render homage to all its citizens. His name, Makarios, reminds us of the opening of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. Who is Makarios? Truly blessed, according to the Christian faith, to which this land is inseparably bound. Everyone can be blessed. And blessed above all are the poor in spirit, those who have experienced suffering in their lives, those who live in meekness and mercy, and all those who, without pretense, practice justice and are peacemakers. The Beatitudes, dear friends, are the perennial charter of Christianity. When they are lived out, the gospel becomes youthful and fills society with fresh hope. The Beatitudes are the compass that in every latitude indicate the routes that Christians must take in the voyage of life. Precisely from this place where Europe and the East meet, there began the first great enculturation of the gospel on this continent. I am deeply moved to be able to retrace the steps of the great missionaries of the early church, particularly Saints Paul, Barnabas, and Mark. So here I am, a pilgrim in your midst, to walk with you, dear Cypriots, all of you, in the desire that the good news of the gospel may bring from here to Europe a message of joy under the banner of the Beatitudes. For what the earliest Christians gave to the world with the gentle power of the Spirit was an unprecedented message of beauty. It was an amazing newness of the Beatitudes, addressed to everyone, that won hearts and bestowed freedom upon many. This country has inherited a particular responsibility in that regard, namely to be a messenger of beauty among the continents. Cyprus radiates a natural beauty that must be protected and preserved by suitable environmental policies, adopted in concert with its neighbors. A beauty that is evident as well in its architecture, its art, especially its sacred art, and its religious crafts, and its many archaeological treasures. To draw an image from the sea all around us, I would even say that this island, which is small in size, represents a pearl of great price in the heart of the Mediterranean. A pearl, in fact, becomes what it is because it takes shape over time. It takes years for its various layers to become compact and give it luster. So too the beauty of this land comes from the cultures which over the centuries have met and blended here. Today, too, the light of Cyprus is richly variegated. Many peoples and nations have contributed different shades and tints to this people. I think, too, of the presence of many immigrants, percentage-wise more than any other country of the European Union. To preserve the multicolored and multifaceted beauty of the whole is no easy thing. As in the formation of a pearl, it takes time and patience. It demands a broad vision, capable of embracing a variety of cultures and looking to the future with foresight. I think in this regard of the importance of protecting and supporting all the members of society, especially those who are statistically a minority. I think too of the various Catholic agencies that would benefit from a sustainable institutional recognition, so that the contribution they make to society through their activities, particularly their educational and charitable works, can be clearly defined from the legal standpoint. A pearl develops its beauty in situations of difficulty. It is born in obscurity. When the oyster suffers after experiencing an unexpected threat to its safety, such as a grain of sand that irritates it. To protect itself, it reacts by assimilating the thing that wounded it. It encloses the foreign body that endangers it and makes it into something beautiful, a pearl. The pearl of Cyprus has been darkened by the pandemic, which has prevented many visitors from visiting it and seeing its beauty. Here, as in other places, this has aggravated the effects of the financial and economic crisis. In this period of recovery, however, it will not be anxious efforts to recover what was lost that will ensure and consolidate growth, but the commitment to promote the recovery of society, especially through a decisive fight against corruption and everything that violates the dignity of the person. Here I think, for example, of the scourge of human trafficking. Yet the greatest wound suffered by this land has been the terrible laceration it has endured in recent decades. I think of the deep suffering of all those people who are unable to return to their homes and their places of worship. I pray for your peace, for the peace of the entire island, and I make it my fervent hope. The way of peace which reconciles conflicts and regenerates the beauty of fraternity has a single word as its signpost. That word is dialogue. You, Mr. President, have repeated that word, dialogue. We ought to help one another to believe in the patient and unassuming power of dialogue on the basis of the Beatitudes. We know that it is no easy road. It is long and winding, but there is no other way to achieve reconciliation. Let us nurture hope by the power of gestures rather than by gestures of power. By the power of gestures rather than by the gestures of power. There is a power of gestures which prepares the way of peace, not gestures of power, threats of reprisal and show of force, but gestures of détente and concrete steps towards dialogue. I think, for example, of openness to sincere discussion that would give priority to people's needs, ever more effective involvement on the part of the international community, the need to protect the religious and cultural heritage, and the restitution of all that people hold most precious in that regard, such as places or at least sacred furnishings. With this in mind, I would like to express my appreciation and encouragement for the religious track of the Cyprus Peace Project, promoted by the Embassy of Sweden, for the cultivation of dialogue among religious leaders.
Proprio I tempi che non paiono propizi e nei quali il dialogo langue.
Times that can seem least favorable when dialogue languishes can be the very times that prepare for peace. The pearl also reminds us of this, for it takes shape in the patient, hidden process of weaving new substances together with the agent that caused the wound. In these circumstances, may hatred not be allowed to prevail. efforts be made to bind up wounds and to keep in mind the situation of those who have disappeared. And when tempted to yield to discouragement, to think of coming generations who long to inherit a world of peace, cooperation, and cohesiveness, not one marred by perennial rivalries and poisoned by unresolved disputes. For this, dialogue is necessary to avoid the growth of suspicion and resentment. Let us think in this regard of the Mediterranean, now sadly a place of conflicts and humanitarian tragedies. It is in its profound beauty. It is Mare Nostrum, the sea of all those peoples who border it, in order to be connected, not divided. Cyprus, as a geographic, historical, cultural, and religious crossroads, is in a position to be a peacemaker. May it be a workshop of peace in the Mediterranean. Peace is not often achieved by great personalities, but by the daily determination of ordinary men and women. The European continent needs reconciliation and unity. It needs courage and enthusiasm if it is to move forward. For it will not be the walls of fear and the vetoes dictated by nationalist interests that ensure its progress, nor will economic recovery alone serve to guarantee its security and stability. May we look to the history of Cyprus to see how encounter and welcome have brought forth good fruits that endure, not only in the history of Christianity, for which Cyprus was the springboard, the trampoline on this continent, but also for the building of a society which found its richness in integration. The spirit of enlargement, this ability to look beyond one's own borders, brings rejuvenation and makes possible the rediscovery of a brilliance that was lost. The Acts of the Apostles speak of Cyprus, tell us that Paul and Barnabas traversed the whole island in order to reach Paphos. I rejoice in these days that I can traverse the history and spirit of this land, in the desire that its yearning for unity and its message of beauty will continue to guide its journey towards the future. May God bless Cyprus.
End of the ceremony.
And with that, the Pope's encounter with civil authorities and diplomatic corps has reached its conclusion. As the Pope makes his final greetings to the President, to participants, we conclude our live broadcast. And please remember that this event is available on our Vatican YouTube channel and our Vatican News portal, where you will find summaries of the Holy Father's discourses and homilies, as well as reports on his main activities. You can find us at www.vaticannews.va. Be sure to find us also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for up-to-date information on the Pope's 35th Apostolic Journey, which takes him to Cyprus and Greece, as well as other news from the Vatican and the Catholic Church around the world. Thanks again to all of you who have joined us on local radio stations around the world or on Catholic TV, Catholic Faith Network, Shalom World Television Networks USA, EWTN TV, Shalom TV India, Salt and Light TV, Atmadarshan TV, and Luminous Radio. Until next time, and on behalf of Vatican Media, I'm Devin Watkins, wishing you every blessing. Laudetur Jesus Christus, praised be Jesus Christ.
Tutto bene?
Μίλα μας Κωνσταντίνε, μίλα μας.
Ω, γεια σας. Un po' gireffe. Va bene, grazie.
Pronti?
Seguite bronzati.